massive, sculptural, rigid, raw, rough, monochrome, tectonic. All these words taken together describe the aesthetic of brutalism. Brutalist architecture is instantly recognizable through its profuse and overt use of concrete and uncompromising structures. Many associate brutalism with the Swiss-French architect Le Corbusier. The term comes from the French word beaten brut, which means raw concrete. He uses reinforced concrete as a fundamental building material in his architecture. However, British architects Alison and Peter Smithson were the visionaries who articulated the ideas of brutalism. They designed the first built brutalist work was the secondary school at Hunston in Norfolk, England. The design theories of brutalism consist of the following points. The honesty of materials. Brutalist design values the honest use of materials, focusing on showcasing the raw and natural beauty of materials such as concrete, steel, and glass timber. This is achieved by avoiding surface finishes or other ornamental details that might hide or obscure the material's true nature. Function over form. In brutalist design, the functional aspects of the building are given priority over its appearance. The building's intended use should guide the building's design, and the materials and structural systems should be chosen accordingly. Brutalist buildings often have a sense of monumentality, with a grand scale and imposing presence. The use of massive, heavy forms and bold, geometric shapes achieves this. The brutalist design emphasizes the expression of the building's structural system. The structural elements are often left exposed or highlighted in some way, emphasizing the building's construction process and engineering. Brutalist architecture often responds to the site's specific context, incorporating elements of the surrounding environment or historical context into the building's design. As you probably know, concrete is readily available, convenient, and inexpensive. As such, it became the perfect material for large-scale reconstruction projects after World War II. For the most part, brutalism was the prominent style of public buildings and social housing. In the 1950s, countries around the world faced the challenge of efficiently rebuilding war-torn cities on limited budgets. Authorities find a simple, fast and reliable crisis solution with brutalist architecture. The style took the world by storm at breakneck speed. It soon became a symbol of modern lifestyle, especially in the United Kingdom and Eastern European communist countries such as the former Soviet Union, Yugoslavia, and Czechoslovakia. However, many examples of brutalism can be found in cities in the United States, Canada, and as far afield as Israel, Japan, and Australia. The Alexandra Road Estate is a complex and multifaceted topic that can be discussed from various angles, including its history, architecture, social and cultural significance, and urban planning. It was designed in 1968 to 1969 by Neave Brown. In London, Camden's Alexandra Road scheme is one of Britain's most architecturally celebrated social housing schemes. But the project overran on both time and budget before it was completed. The architecture of the estate was influenced by the Brutalist movement, which emphasized the use of raw concrete and a functionalist approach to design. This aesthetic was seen as a rejection of the ornate and decorative styles of traditional architecture, and it was intended to express the honesty and simplicity of the design. The design is characterized by its bold, geometric forms and exposed concrete and brick. It challenged the prevailing public housing model in the UK at the time, which typically consisted of large, monolithic tower blocks. Instead, Brown sought to create a more human-scale development that would foster a sense of community among its residents, prioritize livability and functionality, emphasizing communal spaces and natural light. Brown believes that even in inner-city areas, each home should have its frontal opening leading directly into the network of roads and streets that make up the city gates, and each home should have its private outdoor area, with a garden that opens to the sky, or in the form of terraces. Presumably, the relative scarcity of windows on the north facade minimizes the impact of the railway. The best views of the complex are on the west side, as this section crosses the railway tracks. It is worth noting that the windows and the house access to the pedestrian street have visually and physically checked the distance between the public and private spaces. The large double-glazed windows allow ample natural light to enter, and they are oriented to face either east or west to take advantage of the sun's path throughout the day. A combination of subtle changes in paving and tree placement all help define differentiated paths for walkers physically away from the block's entrances. It was built during a time of social change and political activism in the UK and was seen as a symbol of the aspirations of the post-war generation. It focuses on social justice, equality, and community empowerment. In addition, the estate has played an essential role in the cultural history of London. It has been the subject of numerous exhibitions, publications, and documentaries which have explored its significance as a cultural icon of modernist architecture and social housing. The estate has also been recognised as a symbol of the UK's political and social history, particularly regarding housing, urban planning, and social inequality. If you are on foot from work to home every day, the distance you will travel in your lifetime is 5 times around the world. Barbican is an act of faith to build a city within a city, have schools, shops, open spaces, and all other amenities to enable them to live a whole life with purpose and pleasure in it. At the war's end, the corporation had to decide exactly how to rebuild this particular city. In 1950, the council launched an open architectural competition to find an architect for designing Golden Lane Estate. 3 young unknown architects from Kingston Polytechnic each entered the design, making a pact that if one of them won, they would join forces to start a practice and build the scheme. Peter Chamberlin, Geoffrey Powell and Christophe Bon are enthusiasts of the modern style and drew inspiration from modernists such as Le Corbusier. They used structural flourishes, colourful gridded facades, public facilities and large open spaces. This was started as high-density social housing aimed at younger single people and couples rather than families. In 1955 the council took them on the board again to work next door, this time is much larger brief. The Barbican. It is definitively aimed at middle-class professionals and would include housing suitable for families, singles, and couples. The estate comprises 3 tower blocks, 13 terrace blocks, 2 mews, and 2 blocks of townhouses. At the heart of the scheme were over 2,000 residential flats. Elevated walkways connect public facilities, cultural institutions, and civic spaces. The estate incorporated all the modern thinking about cities. One of the big ones was separating pedestrians and cars. The pedestrians were to walk along these raised walkways in the air, and the cars were very much on the ground. In the heart of London, it is a unique chapter in the story of British council housing, and its rise and fall is a tale of political power and design at its most potent. At the time, inner-city living was unfashionable, so the architect introduced a rich cultural program with an art centre, music school, restaurants, a pub and a cinema. They also worked hard to present the estate as exclusive and safe. From the inside, the estate is a lush, landscaped plaza and garden. From the outside, it seems somehow impenetrable and confusing. It isn't obvious how you get into the Barbican. That's the point of incorporating unintuitive thresholds, imposing walls, and hidden entrances. The architecture discourages passers-by from wandering in. As well as physical defences, the architects introduced a layer of poetic references to London's old city war, which runs through the site. The Barbican is one of the oldest districts of London, mostly sitting just outside the ancient city walls. These crumbling turrets are all the remains of a once mighty military defence system. The semicircular shape becomes a visual motif, which recurs throughout the site, tying the scheme together architectural. Those slit openings could be referenced to balusters from 13th century archers who might fire arrows as an attacking army. The sawtooth rhythm of each block's profile recalls the ramparts of medieval fortifications. Telling the architectural story is most accomplished. The Barbican is a residential area but also a castle, a sanctuary containing everything its inhabitants need, a fortress within a city. European modernism looks excellent in the sun but, on an overcast day, feels dead and flat. So, the architects tried to create a more British version of modernism, filled with texture and plants. This rough surface was made by labourers hammering chunks out of the cast in situ concrete by hand. Elsewhere, plants soften ribbons of cantilevered balconies, cascading down the facades like hanging gardens. The art centers are wrapped in the rainforest, creating an urban jungle for residents while tempering the block's visual incursion into the street. There are over 100 different flat types. The idea was that residents would move from apartment to apartment as they climbed the economic ladder. The low-rise blocks contain essentially 1- and 2-bedroom apartments with shared balconies acting as fire escapes. The 3 towers had 3- and 4-bedroom homes. In 1979, the Barbican neared completion. Almost half the population lived in council housing. In 1980, all of that changed. A newly elected Conservative government embarked on a radical plan of council house privatization. Local authorities were forced to sell their housing stock at massive discounts but were prevented from reinvesting that money in new buildings. Today, the housing market has failed to keep up with demand, and as the UK faces the worst housing crisis since World War II, radical solutions are again needed. The post-war political leaders rose to the challenge, and the Barbican stands as a testament to their daring efforts to rebuild the fabric of a broken society. Perhaps this estate, with its potent mix of intimate and open spaces, historical layering and social vision, now offers a critical architectural lesson for today's governments. The buildings are today much more about glass rather than concrete. They crowd around the edge, often making them look slightly old-fashioned. The buildings are so solid and staid and rooted to the ground rather than connected to the sky as modern buildings are. Some people criticize brutalists, but I'm afraid I have to disagree. There's a picturesque quality about the Barbican and Alexandra Road Estate. It's almost quaint in some ways, and this gives us to stage a natural personal feel to it, so it's not just impersonal architecture.